Okay, here we go. So you can see this is what to some extent Sachi has been. Sachi, I hope you like this slide because I've not actually shown you this slide. So, but it is based on
That's
some of your
absolutely right.
work.
Yeah,
Right.
that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see how you can take other frameworks and other strategies, other thing, and you can think about how does it fit into this 2x2, because they are all useful. But the issue really is you do have to think about like what makes effectuation different, but also why are these people doing the effectual thing. You have to, and most importantly, of course, you have to learn how they are doing this thing. So I wanted to put this up here for a minute. But then I also want us to go look at this. How do you actually bring stakeholder? How do you get these commitments? And as Steve Jobs was saying, the first step is to just ask, right? So the ask also fits into this 2x2 because there are multiple ways you can ask. So let me show you the multiple ways you can ask, right? So the standard way we are taught to ask is the standard pitch. So you go in there, you have done your homework, whether it's a sales pitch or an investor pitch or a pitch to your spouse as to why you should start the venture, right? Whatever it is, you have a vision and you craft it out nicely and you go out there and you tell people, here's why you should do this. Here's why you should buy. Here's why you should invest. Here's why you should let me start this venture. This is what we are taught as the bread and butter of entrepreneurial asking. The other way is to say, this is what a lot of people who may not have as much education and who are rookie entrepreneurs just starting out, they will just go and ask, would you please help me? Nothing wrong with that, which is what Steve Jobs did, right? Could you please let me have some frequency counters, right? Nothing wrong with that. So you're asking for advice, you're asking for help, you're asking for feedback. So you're just making like an adaptive ask. But you can also do, this is the comment or the question that came earlier, there is a quid pro quo involved, right? So a lot of people literally don't go and ask. They won't even pitch because they're so hung up on the fact, oh my God, I have to give something up to this other person, or I have to put up with this person from now onwards, right? So there are a lot of people who get so hung up on the quid pro quo that either they will not make the ask or they will end up giving away too much because they believe that, oh, that person is so successful or so brilliant or whatever, or is a celebrity, and so I have to give up. Nobody will give me for free, that kind of thing. And I'm not just making this up. So we did a study of 250 small business owners across the US and then followed that up with 2,000 entrepreneurs in India as well. And we asked them to tell us about the asks that they are trying to make, that they are unable to make, the asks that they're actually making, how they're making the ask and what happened and all of those kinds of things. And we have tons of data. And the quid pro quo is one of the biggest, there are like three major findings, but one of the major finding is people just get hung up on the quid pro quo. So they are so busy trying to come up with a quid pro quo before they actually go in and pitch that sometimes they will never get to the pitch. Or they'll come in and say, I will give you this for 10% of the company, or 30% of the company, or whatever, not realizing that there's only 100% of the company. You can't just go around giving like 10% and 15% to everybody. You have to think very carefully about that before you do. And instead, you want to actually ask, what would it take? Let the other person tell you what the quid pro quo should be, what your pitch should be even. So you don't have to offer anything. You just go in there and say, it would be great if you could do this. What do I need to do? Or what would it take for you to come do this with me? What would it take for you to become a stakeholder, to come co-create this with me? And I'll give you like two examples on this. One example is, I tell this to my students, I assign this as a task in class. So one of the tasks I assign is, whenever there is a successful alumni coming to Darden, I tell my students, go ask them to be on your board of advisor. You have nothing to lose by asking that. And some of them are like really phenomenally successful, right? And they have tons of industry experience. And so I had one student who was like, this person is coming, he would be so perfect for my company because he has industry experience, he's built a successful venture in that industry, and he's an angel investor. So he would be like this perfect person. So I said, okay, go ask him to be on your board. But he is like, I only came up with the idea last week and I'm only like a second year student. Like, what can I offer him? How do I ask him? I said, here's my rule for you. If you want to get credit in the course, you have to ask him without offering him anything. And they were like, how do I do that? I said, go just simply ask him that my professor said that I have to do this, right? So I'll give you an excuse, an affordable loss excuse. So usually a lot of my students will not do it. I'll be frank and tell you that. But this one actually went, and he was, because the guest was at a dinner organized by the school, he could go up to him during cocktails and talk to him and ask him, saying, I am thinking of doing this venture. I just came up with this. I'm taking a class, and my professor said I should ask you to be on my board of advisors. And the guy looks at him, and then somebody else comes and interrupts, and he's talking to this other person. So he thinks, okay, I tried, and like I made a fool of myself, and I'll go and tell Saras this doesn't work. But then a few minutes later, that guy comes in and asks him, so you are starting a venture in this thing, huh? Are you a second year Darden student? He says, yes, I'm a second year Darden student. Oh, you must be really, really smart. Back when I went to Darden, they would admit anybody with a pulse. So if I try to write the exams and get in, I'll probably never get into Darden today because it's so competitive. And then he talks about other things. And then he says, I have a niece who's trying to get into business school. If you could help her, she's not good enough to get into Darden or anything like that. But I think she has a very good business sense. And if you could get on the phone and help her a bit, she'll probably get into a better school than the school she's applying for now. And by the way, this is not a quid pro quo. Here, take my card, give me a call. Would 1 hour be enough for us for the conversation? Let's talk about the advice part. And my student was like coming to class and like jumping. There is no way he could have figured out that the way to build the relationship is to offer to tutor this guy's niece, right? But he would not know that he could even build any kind of a relationship at all if he hadn't asked for what he wanted. And that's the first story about what would it take. The second story, interestingly enough, is Steve Jobs again. In the early stages, Apple was trying to raise money. And in Silicon Valley, nobody would give them the time of the day. So they would chase down venture capitalists. And then finally, no venture capitalists would talk to them. Finally, there was a venture capitalist conference or some event or something like that. And Steve Jobs literally catches hold of Mike Markula and asks him, what do I need to do to get you guys to take us seriously and invest something? And Mike Markula tells him, well, it would help if you showered. It's a joke that Mike Markula tells, and there is a documentary in which he tells it. But the idea is, instead of going and pitching and saying, here's why you should invest in everything, just simply asking people like, what do I need to do? How can I make this work for you? What would it take for us to work together? That kind of question, that kind of framing of the starter relationship is what leads to commitments. I'll pause here again and people can ask questions, or so leave this one up here maybe.
So Saras, one question is, what happens if the new stakeholder runs away with the idea?
That is a good one. Do you want to take it? Shall I take it? I mean,
go ahead, Saras.
Okay. So here is I hate to burst your bubble, but most of the time, most people are going to think your idea is kind of stupid, right? If you have an idea that people actually want to steal, I say it's awesome, give it away. Because let's say you have an idea that is awesome and worth stealing. The moment you build something and find your first customer, There's going to be a couple of people with multi-million dollars in their pockets and 7 coders sitting on their hands, maybe not really true, who can come in and do this, right? How are you going to keep them out anyway? This idea that somehow I'm going to keep it secret until I've made it big just simply does not happen. In fact, the reverse happens. Most people don't want, not only they don't want to steal your idea, even if they decide your idea, most of them are going to think it's stupid, but even if they decide your idea is good, the worst case scenario, they're going to make you an offer to come work for them to build that idea. And if you're a first time entrepreneur, I would say go ahead and do that. Don't worry about people stealing your idea. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. I have a video clip. Shall I show the video clip? My team, what do you think? I have Michael Bell talking about this. So let me, in the meanwhile, Prasanna, you can take a couple more questions. I'll go find Michael Dell on my computer.
Can we do the survey also, Saras?
So let's show this video and then do the survey, because this is on point, right? So
yeah, meanwhile, while you open the survey, actually this is to the guys actually, at NSRCEL.
I have it already, so it's going to be very easy.
Okay.
Let me do this. It will take only 1 minute. Here, you have Michael Dell talking about this problem. Like, in fact, his question is, why didn't anybody steal my idea? My idea was great and anybody could have done it.
Did you benefit from the fact that your established competitors underestimated what you were up to?
Absolutely. And that was perhaps one of the biggest surprises. I remember back in 1987, when the company was, 3 years old, having a tremendous fear that our competitors were going to introduce, any number of things that would make it very difficult for us to compete. And they didn't.
Why not?
It's a great question for them.
Well, they're not here right now.
Fortunately.
Yeah, but I mean, why didn't
and
they look at you and say, wait a minute, direct selling, that's going to work. And if it worked for Dell, let's get into this right now. Let's crush them.
It's a little too late for that. The problem is that, there's a publication in our industry called Computer Reseller News. And all throughout the history of this publication, it sort of has various descriptions about how Dell appeals to, this small niche market, and, the niche is only this big, and it's only this big, and all of a sudden the niche is the whole market. So you go through this series of justifications about why it won't work here and why it won't work there, and it's all wrong, basically. So the fact that the competitors underestimated the potential for this, was a huge, huge benefit.
And just
So this is again connected with Clayton Christensen studies. Because the competitors are usually trying to predict and place a bet, right? And most of the time they think most ideas are not very good actually. And then if you do start it and it works, you're going to get competition one way or the other. And the third thing is, even if somebody thinks it's awesome, they're probably going to reach out to you to buy you or hire you or, something. And nothing wrong with that. It's just business. Okay, so I think, why don't we take a break now? And we would like you to fill out a longer survey. As you can see, a lot of what I do comes from research, and we bring you, and we want to learn from you. We want to learn better what education we can give to people during this difficult time, things like that. And it will also feed into the workshops that Prasanna will do for you, follow on, and things like that. So let's take 15 minutes to do the survey, and also maybe take a bio break, whatever, and come back. And then maybe I will answer many more questions, and maybe we'll do like a fun exercise at the end to finish off. So we can have about an hour's worth of questions when we come back. So let's take a break. And
Sachi, can you give the survey? Guys, it is a very, very important to fill the survey, especially after this. Actually, for those who's going to participate, we're applying these principles in given current scenario, where Prasanna and Sachi will be taking you through. it's important you have to fill this survey.
And also consider this, if I'm going to teach you about asking, I can't let you go without an ask of my own.
Yeah.
The research ask, right?
Yeah.
Nobody can force you to fill anything, but I got to ask anyway, because that's our bread and butter as academics.
So we will restart by 10 minutes is okay?
No, the survey takes longer. It takes around
Yeah.
15 minutes. So we
Okay,
need.
we will
Let's
start
give
at
it 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then people can ask questions about the survey too, no problem. And in fact, when you come back, we'll have about an hour's worth of all kinds of Q&A and, as I said, a couple of little exercises.